Hi, everyone. It's your boy Steve. I am here with my friends Spooky Nookies and Superpower Broadcasting, aka Reese and Kevin. Reese, say hi.
Hello. Thanks for
Kevin,
having us
say
on.
hi.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Hopefully they're doing well. So we this is sort of hangout I do anyways because I've been on your guys' show before, and it was only a matter of time before I had you here. But we do have some business, and we will get to that. That said, this isn't necessarily the point of the live, or I mean, that is the point of the live stream. Reese will get into that, but we're going to be talking about whatever we want. So just bear that in mind. As far as my channel goes, I know I haven't made a video in a while. I will be posting soon. I have scripts written. I just have to record them and edit them. I am currently in the middle of a move, which is a big pain in the ass. And I'm moving from one state to another. And I will be starting a new job in a couple of weeks. So it might, I don't know, I might be missing for a little while. So I'm glad that I randomly checked Twitter because a friend of mine reached out to me and asked me if I would do this. And Reese, you have the details on that.
Yes. Well, if people want to follow along, I saw that you included links in your description. So, yeah, we weren't sure if because I had a sense that you were busy, but I'm glad that we could get this event organized. The long and short of it is that a user by the name of Hawk Arthur, who has done graphic design for Kevin here, myself, and our podcast, School Gang Rising, is currently being sued over internet drama, which is, quite frankly, the first time I've heard of such a thing. And I have yet to come across anyone who has encountered such behavior. There's a lot to it, but basically there is a particularly deranged user who believes that our graphic designer, without evidence that he has yet to provide, created accounts to troll him and defame him. We suspect that this is a lawsuit more so motivated by the fact that he no longer wanted to do graphic design for this user, who's also a YouTuber. And because of that, this is kind of a bit of revenge and making it an especially frivolous lawsuit. So we do have a link included down below, a GoFundMe, along with an original video that explains the situation in more detail. And we've just been promoting it, talking about the case, and gathering funds for his legal defense, because it's one of those things where, yeah, most people won't do this because it does cost a pretty penny to set all of this in motion, but it also costs quite a bit to defend yourself, especially if you want good representation. One of the details of this case that I found particularly shocking, the only reason it's really happening was our friend Arthur is being summoned out of state. He needs to answer a summons out of state, and their legal excuse for this is basically tied to the art commissions themselves. Because he did commissions for this YouTuber, that technically counts as him having done business in that county. So then it's just, free reign to file a lawsuit against that user in said county. If that were not the case, as far as I understand, you'd have to go to the county of the person you're filing a lawsuit against. So I'm not too surprised I don't see this sort of thing often. And also, I just rarely would come across someone who would do such a thing, who would take someone to court over online trolling or what they perceive to be online trolling done by a specific user. But it puts us in a position where we needed to raise funds, because if the summons are not answered, then the plaintiff would win the case by default, and the motivations start to make themselves a bit more clear. It's a way to make a quick buck, in my mind, in a particularly despicable way, especially if as I can, deduce, it seems to be over this pettiness, this vindictiveness of Arthur, the artist, no longer wanting to associate with this YouTuber. So I think that people will be interested in looking into this because, in my mind, if this goes forward, this is what it looks like to open Pandora's box. Like, you don't want to see this type of behavior normalized in any regard in online circles. And over the course of many years, like, I've been in Twitter and YouTube circles since about 2015, never seen anything like this, truth be told. It's, there's been fighting, there's been drama, but compared to this, things have been relatively, fair and kind. This took things to a whole nother level. But again, if people want to look more into that, you can check the description, watch Arthur's video, and check out his GoFundMe page. And I would greatly appreciate any donations toward that fund. I think it goes to a really noble cause, and we'll do everything in our power to prevent frivolous lawsuits from being normalized in online circles.
Thank you for that. Again, like Reese said, link is in the description box below. If you feel it is a worthy cause, by all means, go look and donate. No obligations at all. But other than, we would very much appreciate it. And if you want to help out, obviously the GoFundMe is the best way. But if people happen to donate super chats for this live stream, I will forward those to him. Just an FYI. So if you deem the cause unworthy, do not send those in. Like Reese said, there's always internet drama. People are always getting into bullshit, but there are some line crossers, and this is one of the more egregious crossing of lines I've ever seen. It's almost hard to believe that it's actually a thing, and I donated to it because I think it is a worthy cause. This is a guy who's important to a lot of. I wouldn't call him my friend, but friendly associate, I would say, friendly acquaintance. And I'm glad to help him out because I know he's the sort of guy who would help other people out. Kevin, you got anything on this?
Yeah, thanks for having us on tonight, Steve. So we're not going to be using the name of the plaintiff tonight here. And even though the plaintiff is a public figure, he's the guy who will report your streams and potentially get you taken down if you use him by the name, his name that he uses when he expresses his opinions in the public space. It's very duplicitous behavior on the part of the plaintiff. The plaintiff, what's also notable in this case is that the plaintiff has a long history of engaging in very cringe-inducing antics. People may recall, even if they don't know this guy, they may recall that he was the one who went to, I believe it was the America Fest conference a couple years back, and June happened to be there. And he decided to go all the way in the back and sit right behind her, even though there were a lot of other open seats. And he took creep shots of her, called her very childish things on Twitter. And then she happened to become aware of it, tweeted about it, and that got hundreds of thousands of views. He's also done other antics in the past. But the lawsuit thing, where he's spent about the last 8 months or so of his life, by his own admission, stating that he's happy to bankrupt himself as long as he can do financial damage to our friend Arthur. It's unlike anything that we've ever seen. As Reese was stating, if he were to succeed in this lawsuit, it would set the precedent going forward that anybody out there can make up anything about you if you're a public figure or whatnot. And not only can they sue you, but they can potentially force you to have to travel to his state, and he wins by default if you don't show up. And he doesn't actually need any evidence. in order to issue the lawsuit. He did about a 2.5 hour stream about 2 weeks ago, right after the lawsuit was officially served. And in that stream, he laid out what he considers to be his evidence, the evidence that he's using, and it was based on 3 different private investigation firms that he had paid somewhere around $12,000 to get this information, personal details and stuff on our friend Arthur. Um, he claims in it that the IP addresses of these accounts, these like basically these accounts with like 0 to 4 followers that were trolling the plaintiff. He claims that Arthur was behind those accounts. And in a couple of the reports that he cites on the stream, and it should be noted that these were confidential reports that were highlighted as confidential, but he streamed them anyway, which is embarrassing. In that, he said that, or at least the reports claimed, well, the IP addresses look really similar to Hawk Arthur's. The problem is, it was Twitter's host IP address. Furthermore, they claimed that when they went to go and look at the fake accounts that were trolling the plaintiff, in the recommended or relevant people section on Twitter, you would see that account, and then on one occasion, Hawk Arthur appeared there. But when Reese and I went to go and look at those accounts the other day, it recommended the plaintiff there. So they're trying to use that as evidence that, well, because his account gets recommended when you look at these fake accounts, it must be his, without taking into account how Twitter's algorithm works, that the plaintiff talks about the defendant a lot. The plaintiff interacts with the defendant a lot. The plaintiff is the one being referenced and replied to by the fake account. And then when you go to look at the fake account, most of the time, it will have random figures there or the plaintiff there. And on one occasion, it happened to have the defendant there. So which is it? If we can just use that as evidence to try to demand $25,000 from somebody, and yes, that's how much the plaintiff in this case is demanding without any evidence whatsoever and without providing any reason for that amount, no calculation behind that amount. And who, in that stream that he did, where he leaked basically his entire legal strategy, he claimed, well, I don't need to calculate it because the form, in order to file the lawsuit, doesn't require me to prove any damages. So I don't actually have to be damaged in order to demand $25,000. Now, I want to say something to folks out there watching. So thank you for watching the stream, and taking the time to view this. You don't need to know Hawk Arthur. You don't need to agree with Hawk Arthur. You don't need to, be his friend or whatever. If you're anybody who values being able to participate in the public discourse without having people just be able to make up any claim against you and demand money from you and win by default if you don't travel across the country or potentially even to another country, you might want to consider contributing to Hawk Arthur's legal fund. At the moment, we've raised about almost $1,000, but he's probably going to need at least $5,000 in order for this to be thoroughly shut down. And it needs to be thoroughly shut down because the precedent that this would set going forward would mean that any Twitter drama in the future can just become a money grab where, oh, okay, now your wages are garnished for the next 10 years because some rando groiper or something decided that they were just going to say, oh, well, you were behind some alt account or something without any evidence at all. And now all of a sudden you got to pay like a $50,000 or $100,000, judgment for the next 10 years of your salaries. It's ridiculous. It's abhorrent behavior. The plaintiff is a horrible person. He knows he has no evidence whatsoever. And the final thing I'll say before we go forward here is that he didn't even start out by trying to sue Hawk Arthur. For the first couple of months after these accounts cropped up, he was convinced it was a user by the name Neil Konosuke. And he, by his own admission, went out to 2 different PI firms to try to get his address, his name, all this stuff. Neil Konosuke is an anonymous user, not a public figure. The plaintiff spent about $12,000 trying to find out who he was. And he wasn't able to get the concrete details that he needed in order to try to sue him for these accounts. Now, he had no evidence that it was Asuka either. It was just this feeling, ooh, there's some accounts that are trolling me. It must be X person, because, of course, this guy has a years-long track record of getting into fights with basically every different type of community on Twitter. When I saw the accounts at first, we figured, oh, that's probably the anarchists or something messing with him. But no, he thought it was Neil Konosuke. After he found out that he couldn't get the docs on Neil Konosuke in order to try to serve him with the lawsuit, then he moved on to claim that it was Hawk Arthur. And we theorized the reason why he went forward and committed to suing Hawk Arthur is because he had Hawk Arthur's a lot of his personal information already. Hawk Arthur had done the art commissions for him. And final embarrassing and pathetic and dishonorable layer of irony to all of this is that in the stream, the latest stream that appears on the plaintiff's channel, the background art during the entire 2.5-hour stream, as he maligns Hawk Arthur's character, accuses him of committing felonies, doxes his county, and doxes the specific area he lives within that county, none of which were public information. The plaintiff uses the background art, and it's on StreamYard. He doesn't use the Powered by StreamYard thing. He uses his own logo. That logo, that Neocon Action logo, and the background art were both commissioned from Hawk Arthur. So he's using Hawk Arthur's art as he's suing him. And I can't believe I forgot about this part. Hawk Arthur saved his life last year. The plaintiff was down in the dumps and had messaged the Discord that they both happened to be in that essentially he was going to end it. And Hawk Arthur, he reached out to the helpline and asked what he should do. They advised that he called the police in the plaintiff's county and asked them to do a wellness check. And they did that. And this is documented that he did that. And now the plaintiff, who wouldn't even be here if it weren't for Hawk Arthur, is claiming that he created these accounts to try to get him to end it all. You can't make this up, folks. This is beyond parody. We've never seen anything like this. And it has to stop. Otherwise, it's just going to continue. So it'll be somebody else next.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Yeah, this the plaintiff is a crazy person, to say the least.
Yeah.
So like I said, links are below. No obligations, but it'd be very helpful. So anything you guys want to talk about? I have a few topics in mind.
What do you have, Steve?
Have any of you gone on Threads yet?
Yes, I created one today, and I have 6 followers.
Nice.
Hey, not bad.
Okay, so what do you think about it?
I think it's funny that Elon Musk is trying to sue them. He's claiming that they copied Twitter.
Well, yeah, apparently they used when they laid off a bunch of employees, Mark Zuckerberg hired them. And they basically helped make this Twitter clone. And it is very much a Twitter clone, let's be real. If you've seen it, it's not too far off from what Twitter is. Now,
I don't think that Elon would have run into a lot of these problems if he hadn't been so aggressive with the firings. I mean, I feel that a lot of the firings that he did in the first couple months that he took over were counterproductive, and they made Twitter have a lot of issues. Now, myself and a lot of other folks speculated that within 6 months, Twitter would probably be unusable. And that never happened. Twitter is still functional, though it has some issues still. I think that I think to some extent, there is a reason why certain big companies will keep, operations going even if they're not necessarily profitable, because it's a way of staving off competitors from getting in. I mean, Twitch is operated even though it's not necessarily profitable, because if Amazon gives that up, well, somebody else will get into that, and they'd rather have their share of the market and be there rather than lose out, essentially. Big companies can generally afford to do that. Twitter's a big company, but Elon Musk took on about $13 billion in debt in order to purchase it. And the interest rate, it amounts to about $1 billion a year for debt servicing to acquire Twitter. So, yeah, he had to fire a lot of people.
yeah, Twitter's not making $1 billion a year.
No, it's not. It's actually it's amazing that he paid $40 billion for it. It's not only amazing that he paid $40 billion for it, it's amazing that he financed basically a third of that, and he financed it at like a 7% interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he was going to have to fire the people that would have the potential of ever making it profitable. So it's just a vanity project essentially on his part. But I do appreciate the verification system, though. I haven't been impersonated to any like big extent ever since that came into place. So I appreciate that. So
Gotcha. Yeah, honestly, I am thinking about buying blue check just when I start posting videos again, because it really does. You do get throttled when you don't have that check. And
oh yeah,
past that, the only real difference I've noticed on Twitter is there's way more bots. There's so many bots in my DMs. Like, hello, I am a what do they say? I am a something woman who is interested and is in your area. Would you like to meet up or something like that?
yeah.
Local singles.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I suppose somebody falls for that, right? Okay.
Yeah, it has to happen, otherwise they wouldn't be in business.
Sure.
So it's amazing though. It's amazing how like obvious these like catfishes are, especially because it's Twitter too. It's like first name, bunch of numbers with like some South Korean woman models
right
picture is interested in you.
She's pretty.
It's sort of like that guy who goes on Pornhub and it says local singles in your area, and he thinks that they're actually like real women that they didn't just use like random Facebook photos from hot chicks. I actually did know a guy who, oh man, he was probably in his 50s, and he got catfished by women on Twitter, and he thought they were his girlfriends, and they always needed, a new set of tires on their car or something like that. They needed help in some regard. So he was constantly sending them money under the, the pretenses that they would one day meet up and presumably, sleep together. Okay, Justin for 199. Thoughts on RFK Jr. Reese, go ahead.
He's a fash.
A fascist.
And a daily disgrace to his family name. I fucking hate this guy.
Okay, what specifically about him?
We'd had Ghoul Gang Rising on hiatus for a long time, but I knew that inevitably when we had come back, we don't have time for that now because we have to deal with all this legal defense bullshit. When we come back, we'll inevitably have to review some of his interviews. He's a Vatnik. He's opposed to Ukraine. He's enabling the Russians. The only real saving grace is I don't think he's a political factor, really. He's way overhyped. I don't think he has a chance of getting the nomination. I thought Bernie would have had more of a chance, honestly, and he never did. So,
but did you see those shirtless photos of him benching 110?
Yeah, everyone's criticizing his form. Yeah. I guess that's supposed to be impressive. It's kind of like the Tulsi effect.
Yeah.
She had this whole thing where like, I'm in shape and you all
Mhm.
aren't, and it's like, okay, but you dust portraits of despots and lick their boots, so who cares? But you can surfboard, so I guess that's cool now. We'll just look past everything else.
So, Kevin, I take it you don't like RFK Jr. either?
So for RFK Jr., I'm going to be honest, I haven't really looked into him in any sort of great detail. The only stuff I've seen of him was essentially some comments about Ukraine that were extremely ridiculous. And then his comments about vaccines in general, and specifically also the COVID stuff, which was just kind of clown pilled. But without looking into all of his policies and stuff, I wouldn't be able to like necessarily say 100%. But at least what I've seen of him so far, I don't like.
So he is best known for the vaccine stuff, and that's his, probably his most eccentric position. So it's not an accident that that became the thing that his presidential candidacy got associated with. But past that, he's very much throughout his career been an establishment Democrat. And think of that what you will. For some people, that's toxic. It's ironic that people like Jimmy Dore and Joe Rogan, who don't like the Democratic Party, are so like enthusiastic about this guy who very much has been part of the DNC machine.
Because they're losers. They're so desperate to have any supportive voice.
Yeah.
Even if it's someone who has 15 minutes of fame in this election cycle.
And it's like, part of it's the hyper contrarianism of it. Like, oh, well, he spoke out against vaccines, therefore we got to rally around this guy. It's like everything else about this guy's career. He's been credibly accused of greenwashing. Greenwashing being, corporations doing pseudo-environmentalist stuff to help their image. All of this is true about him, and it's exactly the sort of thing that he gets slammed on, but he's got this, position on the COVID vaccine, so he's awesome now and he should be president. So I think the whole thing's ridiculous, but
he doesn't have a chance in hell.
No, he will, he's not gonna. Most of the polls I've seen, it is funny that he's gotten in the race because basically has destroyed Marianne Williamson. Like she was always let's be real here. She was always a gadfly candidate, but her best bet was being her versus Biden. Now that it's a crowded field, so to speak, she's basically just been forgotten about, which is really funny to me because I watch people like Crystal Ball and Kyle Klinsky, who she officiated their wedding, and now they shield for her. But they shielded for her beforehand, and they would have shielded for her otherwise.
That's gross.
Yeah, she's wildly unqualified as well. But now she's basically just been forgotten about. She would have been forgotten about anyways, but it just came sooner because Bobby Kennedy came into the race.
Well, here's the thing, and we'll see how this goes over with the audience, because I tend to lean Democrat. Kevin's Canadian, so he'll have an entirely different perspective. But I'm guessing most people watching don't, and that's perfectly fine. But I'll tell you something about the Democrats from an insider perspective. You launch your campaign with this message of, I am going to take us back to the glory days. I'm going to reform the party. Yeah, Democrat voters don't like that shit. That puts people on edge. They don't like that. They don't like the kind of hyper contrarianism. That's why I was never really worried about like a Trump like figure arising out of the Democrats, because maybe it's a double-edged sword. Maybe you could say something about political tribalism here, a lack of proper self-reflection, but I see it in a much more positive light. I see it as they're very cautious. They're not overly revolutionary or ambitious. That's kind of the meme I think about the Democratic Party. They're very centristy, very careful. They don't like to really shake things up, and they certainly don't like people who say we're going to radically change the party, especially if they're saying we're going to take the party back, and they have a totally twisted view of what the party used to be. I seem to miss the days when the Democratic Party was anti-vaccine, was against American endeavors and national security and regional partners. But maybe 200 years ago, I don't know. But certainly not within any voter's lifetime. That's
So,
for sure.
first of all, I believe that the Democratic Party is the oldest political party in the world. It's either them or the Tories. I can't remember, but they've been around for a while. So maybe way back in the day is what they're thinking about. But modern Democrats, the primary voters, tend to be very much party line people. They listen to the establishment, and I hate that word, but they definitely, especially black voters, they tend to vote the party line. And they vote for who party bigwigs endorse and such like that. And Reese, you live in Wyoming, correct?
That is correct.
And so there's
Whoa,
30
whoa, don't bounce me.
Well, I thought this was public knowledge.
No, it is. It's cool.
Okay. Well, and for those of you who don't know, there's only 30 people in Wyoming, and 2 of them are Democrats. And so Reese has a very
doesn't
good
ever go
insight.
our way, sadly.
Yeah,
Reese has
and when they
insight
say
with knowledge.
the population of 500,000, it's 490,970 buffaloes and 30
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
I mean, in the last notable election in the state, I was supportive of Liz Cheney. So there's kind of an understanding that you're not going to get local Democratic support.
Sure.
So you choose, and I align with Liz Cheney on a great number of things, probably more so than the average Democratic voter anyway. So didn't really matter to me.
Who's your congressman now?
Oh God,
Mm.
putting me on the spot. I'm not connected. Barrasso? No, he's one of the senators. Oh no, the one who replaced Cheney, Harriet Hagman.
Hagman, right?
Don't
Yeah.
remind me of her.
Harriet.
Yeah,
We
she-
reacted to her. She's pretty cringe.
She's like an anti-Liz Cheney. Like take all of Liz Cheney's positions, and she's the inverse. So
Interesting.
yeah,
I have been
very pro-Trump, very apologetic to enemy regimes, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. I've been to Wyoming once. That state is empty. There is
You're not wrong.
there is not many people. Like, it is when you think of like rural, certain images come to mind, but it's beyond that. There's nothing in any direction. It's crazy.
Hey man, we got blue skies.
No, it's very I would say it's a beautiful state in a lot of ways, but yeah, not a lot of people, which is, whatever. We got big states, we got small states, we got dense states, we got sparsely populated states, and Wyoming is certainly the latter. So I guess the other thing that I wanted to talk about is, have you guys seen what's going on with the Young Turks, my favorite YouTube channel?
Oh, the Anna Kasparian thing.
Well, it's that, and another employee has departed for
Right, and
related reasons.
And that employee is trans, correct?
Correct. It's a trans woman named Benny Carollo, I believe is her name. And
Anna was accused on Twitter of microaggressing against this employee.
Yeah, so Anna tweeted out, I don't know, like a month and a half, 2 months ago, that the term birthing person was ridiculous and condescending, which it is. And I generally avoid the trans issue for a number of reasons.
And for some reason, you bring it up while we're here.
I mean, like, come on. I got to talk about TYT drama. That if there is one thing in my wheelhouse, it's that.
Oh, we know.
Yeah.
We know all too well, Steve.
I honestly think I am the person who follows TYT the closest, aside from maybe Devin Tracy. But none of their critics follow them, or no critics follow them as closely as I do. I mean, a lot of people talk about them because they're a popular punching bag, but a lot of people do make lazy videos. Not many people are as plugged in as I am. Not many people are as committed critics as I am. I don't know what that says about me. That's kind of pathetic as the words come out of my mouth.
You're interested in it, and it is interesting because they're always they're always up to something. They're always losing people, and then their former employees go off and often become worse than them. It's a breeding ground of horribleness, in my opinion.
This is true. So let's recap here. Former employees who publicly bashed the company: Jimmy Dore, Michael Tracy, Dave Rubin, and now Benny Carollo. So Anna was tweeted out this I don't think it's anti-trans thing, but this thing about how birthing person is a stupid term, which it is. And apparently, obviously it upset people. Apparently Benny Carollo went to TYT HR and reported Anna for this tweet as creating a hostile workplace.
Tweet.
Yes.
Okay.
This is according to Anna. She said this on Stitch and Adam. I don't know if you guys watched that interview, but and then TYT talked about how, hey, trans women competing in women's sports is unfair. Certain trans issues are losing issues for Democrats. All these things that now. So they lost Mike Figueredo, the Humanist Report, as a contributor. They've lost plenty of friends, and now they're getting shat on as bad allies to the LGBT community. And so I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts on this? Have you followed it?
So I followed the thing when Anna had that tweet and whatnot, and I know probably a lot of the people in the audience here are probably not too big a fan of Vosh, but I watched Vosh's criticism of it, and I thought it was generally pretty accurate because he pointed out, wait, so Anna's very upset that people keep coming up to her and referring to her as a birthing person, and he's like, he calls BS on it and basically says, yeah, that hasn't happened to you. Like, I know she lives in California, but the idea that like she's basically traumatized by like random people calling her a birthing person, like, yeah, that hasn't happened. My view is that she's trying to set herself up for a career in like right/quasi-right media in the next decade, possibly.
Oh, so you think she's playing a Rubin?
I think she's playing it in a Rubin direction, but Rubin, a lot of his stuff was based around like economics for the most part when he left. She's going more in the social direction of leaning into like, the people standing with Rowling and Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro. So
this is where Kevin and I are going to heavily deviate, because I think there's not a worse candidate to be a right-wing pundit than Anna Kasparian. I don't think that's what she's doing at all. And I don't remember the wording of her tweet. I don't know if she said specifically she was approached and called these things. I think it was just complaints about the language in general, which seems entirely valid to me. And keep in mind, we're all coming at this from a man's perspective. I think it's a little difficult to imagine exactly how this language would make someone feel, and how it would erase one's identity and things of that sort. I don't think that she's right wing for her comments or for any shows she's gone on, and she's still going to be a TYT in 10 years by my prediction. So I wouldn't compare her to Dave Rubin at all.
Are you sure? I saw a video back in 2018 saying that she was going to quit the Young Turks. So maybe that holds up. No,
and yet she's still there.
I know. I get comments all the time on that video. Hey, sweet prediction, dude. I know.
There may be some truth to it, as much as people don't want to hear that this is a losing issue. This is an issue that turns people off. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's right to ignore it. And I have very complicated feelings about this, but I've said that it's the left's weakest point. It's the point that makes the left look the most ridiculous to the average person. Mm-hmm. And that's why the right hammers on it so much. So, and people will also say that, oh, this is just going to go away. I think that's going to take quite a bit of time, and that's a very optimistic view. I mean, there's people who think that homophobia went away. I don't think that went away at all. So really, I don't see this going anywhere. There's, and I wouldn't say, there's also people who will say that transphobia isn't real. I don't think that that's true either. I just don't think that her rhetoric that I've heard has fit the criteria of transphobia.
For what it's worth, I do not think Anna is going for the grifter angle. That doesn't mean she won't, but I think she is someone who feels compelled to speak her mind, and if something's bothering her, she's not going to filter it out for anybody. So, for better or worse, for their company. Now, of course, it's not just the trans issue; it's also been the defund the police stuff, the police abolition, and the crime stuff that she really departs with from the I guess you would call them the far left, which I think she's absolutely right about.
Which is interesting because some people treat her as like a spokesperson for the far left, but and there's certainly some overlap, but I see Anna as just kind of a liberal, for the most part.
I mean,
these figures, people like Jank. Oh, sorry, but people like Jank and Anna, and this usually goes for any sort of public figure for the most part. They're generally going to be more reasonable than the audience that they accrue.
Sir, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, probably. The thing is, when she was on Stitch and Adam, she said that she was a big fan of the Nordic model, which, of course, is not post-capitalist or leftist or socialist in any meaningful sense. They have a large welfare state, larger than the United States. That's true, but they also have more free trade than we do, and are, in certain respects, somewhat more capitalist than the United States. Though I think they're in totality, they're further left. But at one point, she was, before Michael Brooks died, she was, really good friends with him, and she was talking like a Marxist. I don't know. She seems to be going all over the place these days.
Well, I have the tweet. Okay, I have the particular tweet. This is dated the 22nd of March of this year. She says, quote, "I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this S word." And then she also proceeds to tweet, "Lol, the meltdowns over wanting to be referred to as a woman rather than a quote-unquote birthing person is pretty wild. I'll never apologize for that, especially as a biological woman who had a effing lifetime of being told I'm less, that I'm a woman. No apologies." So she tweets these out. But again, I think Vosh's analysis of it was spot on, where he basically just asked, okay, but who has been insisting on calling you these things? It seems like a straw man. It seems like she's just trying to virtue signal how she's in opposition to some idea of radical trans rights to try to, I guess, have a wider audience, win over some conservatives to maybe her economic agenda. I don't know. I mean, I've already speculated. I think that she might be trying to set herself up to change aisles in online media, but I'm not going to say 100% that that's what she's doing. But I definitely feel like she's just getting upset at basically non-existent tropes and whatnot. Like, I'm just imagining right now somebody in her personal life coming up to her just in LA when she goes to like her BMW dealer to like get her car looked at or something, because she talks about how she loves her BMW and stuff, and they're just like, okay, yes, you're a birthing person, we'll work on your vehicle. And she's like, no, you can't call me that, I'm a woman. It's like it doesn't happen. It's a straw man. So
I don't understand why we're not just assuming that that's her, giving her the benefit of the doubt, saying that that would be her genuine opinion, her take on things. And I think that she's speaking more generally. I don't think that she's implying there that people have personally come up to her and specifically called her these things, more so that they've referred to women at large as these things. I think that analysis from Vosh, which I have not seen, but from how you're describing it, I think it sounds utterly pedantic and doesn't engage with the actual issue here.
But is she not a person with a uterus? She's also a human. You could say it's dehumanizing to call her a Homo sapien. No, I'm a woman. I'm not a Homo sapien. It's you're both. You're a person
strange.
with a uterus and a woman.
Well, that'd be a strange way to refer to someone, I find.
Wait, what if I called you a person with a penis, Kevin?
Well, that would be true. So.
But that would be very socially autistic, would it not?
Yeah, well, yes, but the difference is if there was a movement out there in about half of the states, not to mention most of the countries in the world, to try to persecute people who had penises, then maybe, okay, well, you can call me a man, but I'm not going to really lose it if somebody says that, if they're coming from the perspective of trying to uphold the rights and dignity of men. In this case, this is in the context of Ben Shapiro and his acolytes trying to wage a genocide against trans people, and numerous politicians in the United States engaging in far more transphobic rhetoric than even they were doing in the 90s or the 2000s. And then in that context, you have people out there who try to fight against it and try to use trans-positive language. And then Anna Kasparian, of all people, not even a lot of centristy type folks, but somebody who's nominally more you would assume to be default pro-trans rights, comes out and has a huge issue with trans-affirming language. You could kind of see why people might think of that as kind of a betrayal and be more upset about her coming out that way than they would if some run-of-the-mill conservative or centrist said something like that. I think people are more surprised because they expect more from her. So
I don't disagree with that. And I've definitely seen that criticism, why are you harping on about this when you should, or, you could be using your platform to speak about this? I do think it's important in this conversation to just say, I don't support, any sort of Republican take on the issue and their solutions, in quotes, depriving people of medication, things of that sort are just so backward and fly in the face of any sort of sense of liberty that we would have in this nation. And there needs to become a point where we accept that other sorts of people will want to live a different sort of life, and that is their path to pursue. At the same time, I don't think the reality of that should prohibit people from speaking on this, because the context is also important in that regard. There is an attempt, you have that comment highlighted, Steve. Yeah, there's an attempt by certain medical organizations to dance around using terms that were completely normal and acceptable even up to a couple years ago. And it seems like we are sort of losing a handle on our language during this time when we're so concerned about bending over backwards in order to accept people.
Here's the thing.
No, I disagree with that. On the point about the comment here, that term, even though it's kind of like a silly sounding term, birthing person, I think person with a uterus, for example, is a far more accurate term from a medical perspective than woman, because you have numerous gender and sex disorders and whatnot that affect anywhere from 1 in 1,000 to 2 in 100 people who they don't necessarily meet the traditional biological definitions of what would constitute a woman in the old speak. So a person with a uterus is a more accurate descriptor. And in the medical field and in science, you want to be as accurate as possible. You want to avoid lay speak, because words have meaning. And if you can use a word that has a more specific meaning, that is preferable to using a word that has a less specific or a more abstract meaning. And so especially when it comes to something like this, because you could be a woman without a uterus, and you could be a person with a uterus who identifies as a man, for example. There are chromosomal disorders as well. So these sorts of things are, I see it as a sign of progress that medicine and science are preferring to use more accurate descriptors. And yeah, it's a point of contention that culture warriors on the right can harp on about, because they're just butthurt that they lost the war on gay rights, so now they have to go twice as hard on the war against trans people. But in 30 years, even the most staunch conservatives are going to be upholding trans rights as a Western, tradition, essentially. So
I'd be perfectly fine with them, in medical circles using sex as a descriptor. And if you're talking about pregnancy as an issue, it can already be assumed that the female in question has a uterus. Like and again, I think that the conversation really is missing something because we don't have a woman here. That's another part of why
sure.
I don't usually, dip my toe into this issue. Also, because it is by far the most toxic online discourse. Honestly, I'd rather have an Israel-Palestine debate again. Like that fills me with less dread than speaking about this. But I think we would get a very useful perspective there when it came to what they feel is an erasure of their place in society.
So, just for reference, in case you're listening, the comment that I've highlighted is a $5 super chat from Fat Brown Buffalo. Thank you, Fat Brown Buffalo. And again, any super chats are getting forwarded to Arthur's fund. He asks, didn't recent Biden bill / executive order use the term birthing person? And aren't certain medical organizations replacing woman with birthing person? So the first one was in Biden's budget. They replaced the word mother with birthing people. As far as medical organizations, I'm sure some have. But here's the thing about Anna just tweeting that. She didn't just, this is something they talk about a lot on their show. They talk about trans stuff, and they're constantly criticizing the Ron DeSantis's of the world for their supposedly anti-trans legislation. It's not like they haven't voiced their support. What's wrong with also including in that, hey, I think this term is condescending?
Well, what Kevin was kind of getting at, I suppose a lot of the criticism I saw online was this is a non-issue to begin with. That seemed to be where, and I can see the betrayal, premise as well, where maybe they'll go a little harder on Anna than they would from someone they would assume to be speaking up about this. But in truth, I don't have an issue with people speaking up about this because they're silly terms. I think that they make us look very ridiculous as a society. And yeah, it does turn people off. I don't see what would be wrong about just including the term mother in a bill, but I guess that would be offensive to someone. We lost Steve. No.
What? Wait.
No.
Wait, where'd he go?
I don't think the stream's going to last with Steve gone.
That's not good.
That is not good.
That is bad and not good. Where did Steve go? Well, I guess we have to entertain the people until
he couldn't
Steve
handle
returns.
the edge of our debate.
Yeah, until Steve returns, we have to entertain the people.
He ran away.
Hi.
There he is.
Okay.
I didn't mean to leave you guys.
Hopefully the stream is fine. I assume it will be.
I have a window open. It looks like it's fine. So.
Oh, thank goodness.
That would be a shame if we lost it. All this great conversation. I don't know. Anything else about Anna? Crime issue? Any stuff like that?
Do you want to say something? Do you want to finish it up, Kevin?
About Anna?
Yeah.
Well, I've watched Young Turks since like 2007. Kind of tapered off. paying a lot of attention to them after like 2016. But from what I've seen of Anna, basically every time that she gets like serious traction and notoriety lately, over the last couple years, it's always for expressing what could be viewed at least as more conservative sentiments. And so I do think that she's definitely more socially conservative than a lot of the rest of the folks out there in the TYT crowd. TYT's been a little bit interesting on that because their whole their foreign policy is always kind of aligned with the like the Republican conservatives. They often will engage in undermining the sovereignty of Ukraine. They often do apologetics for Russia. They'll do apologetics for a lot of conservative regimes to try to own the United States. And so to me, it seems kind of logical that, if you're somebody who's going to do apologetics for Russia and Europe, well, Russia doesn't like trans people very much. If you don't like trans people very much at home, well, that's a consistent position to have. So, if you hate trans people, yeah, you should support Russia. You shouldn't support Ukraine. So
I don't know how much her message or how well it would go over, especially when it says something along the lines of this isn't to denigrate support for trans people. So I don't think that sort of message is really going to be that appealing to a super transphobic crowd. And I will say, just kind of as a closing point, I can't stand Anna Kasparian. I think she's a total vatnik. And I mean, it's funny to hear her described as conservative because I've always seen her as, being very definitively left wing in her cringe. But it's just a strange time, I suppose. But at the same time, as much as I dislike her, does that mean I need to buy into every, deranged complaint coming from the TRA crowd aimed toward her? They pretty much will go after anyone. It doesn't take much to step out of line. And I can understand why people don't like the way that language is changing. I can understand why people do find it demeaning and how it essentially would, I suppose, take away your personhood and break you down to your parts. Yeah. And I don't have as much experience with that, given what I would deem as a very obvious patriarchal form of society. But it usually does seem to be women who are speaking out about this issue. I'm all for them speaking out. And I think that the reception to many of these women is, toxic, aggressive, basically displays the worst attributes of masculine culture. And it's disgraceful. The way that a lot of women are treated online when they speak about these issues is despicable. And I think that they should feel safe to voice their opinion, even if it's an issue that some will say doesn't matter. I've been through that where I'll speak on something that personally interests me, and you'll inevitably get the person who says, "Why are you talking about that when you could be talking about this?" Well, because it's my platform, buddy. It's my platform, and that's what happened to interest me.
I'll just say this on TYT. Not for the first time. This is the them reaping what they sow. Years and years and years of calling people sellouts, calling people racists, calling people homophobes for slightly disagreeing with them. Naturally, they're going to have somebody to their left of them. It's inevitable that happened. And of course, their same rhetoric is visited upon them, which is fitting. What else? Those are the two topics I wanted to talk to you guys about. You got anything?
Well, I did just want to add, you can definitely be a left-wing conservative. I mean, one of the most famous ones would have been Stalin. You got Xi Jinping, Kim Il-sung, all these guys.
Left-wing conservative.
Jackson Hinkle is a left-wing conservative. You got a lot of folks like that.
What are the features of a left-wing conservative?
An emphasis, a priority, a primacy given to social traditionalism, traditional social mores, and strong left-wing economic agenda.
Okay. So the top left quadrant of the political grid.
Yes, with socially conservative social morality, essentially. So instead of socially progressive.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. That term can be used to describe people, but when Anna Kasparian voices support for this sentiment, of women's dignity, I don't see that as being particularly conservative.
It's women's dignity at the expense of trans people, though. It's a fundamentally exclusionary approach, and moreover, with regards to all of this, the point that I was trying to make earlier is just that it's such a non-issue in the context of such a major issue, because right now you have many states that are doing legislation to persecute trans people, and then you've got other people out there who, whether you agree with it or not, you might think that they're going too far in the other direction. Okay, but those people are anti-genocide, and she has the issue with the anti-genocide wing of the political spectrum in the U.S. I just see it as a very kind of out of touch thing to say. I think a lot of people they found it to be kind of off-putting, given what's happening. If you're a trans person in Florida right now, you're not going to have a very good time. You're going to have a worse time than you would have if you lived in Florida in the 1990s. I mean, think about that. The transphobia and the anti-trans policies and rhetoric takes up a far bigger percentage of conservative politicians' work now than it did in the 2000s or the 90s. And I think the reason why is because they tried for the longest time to do anti-gay stuff, and they lost. You got a ton of conservatives out there who are like, oh yeah, we support gay rights. And they basically had to throw in the towel, but they're mad. So they have to be like, okay, well, we didn't lose. We're just going to focus hard on the anti-trans stuff. And now they're like, we support LGB, but not the T, and other very childish sorts of stuff like that. So.
Cool. Like I said, there's a reason I avoid this topic. I don't really have strong feelings about it, and it's a landmine. It's got landmines all over it. People have very strong feelings about it, and that's why I avoid it.
Hey, we discussed it for you.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we had
a conversation
debate
on that one. Okay. Somebody said Devin Tracy was in the chat, and I think he called you cringe, Kevin, but
he called me cringe. Well, if he's in the chat, and I don't know if that's I don't know if that's him.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It could be him. The thing is, there's a lot of people who make like Tracy type alts and stuff and whatnot. Like he has like an almost like cult following with his fans and whatnot. I don't know if that's him. If it is him, or if he happens to see this, or if somebody sends this to him, what I would say is that I'm not even going to address anything else. Just his comments about Emmett Till, absolutely reprehensible, and just something out of the 1930s. So
there you go, Devin. Kevin disagrees with you on Emmett Till.
As do any people who uphold the dignity of humanity. So.
Okay, well, good to know. So, like I said, I'm in the middle of a move. It's not fun, but when that's all wrapped up, and hopefully this Arthur situation is wrapped up, I would very much be happy to. I hope you guys resume your show.
Yeah, that's the other part of this that's such a shame, because we had been, nothing was concrete, but we had been wanting to come back, once summer hit. We had been on hiatus for quite a while just because things come up. That was around the end of last year. It's just a very busy time, and it really just never stopped being busy, quite frankly. It's not like we did the show as a job. I mean, you know it. Mm-hmm. You know it well, Steve. Like, it's the money on YouTube is not what it used to be. And in truth, it was never really anything for me to begin with. So
Sure.
people have to go away. It's the hobby, and oftentimes it can be a very time consuming hobby. But we did
Definitely.
want to come back, but we had to come back and talk about all this psychotic bullshit
Mhm.
coming from the plaintiff in the case.
Right.
And that's not fun at all. So yeah, our hands are definitively full. But I am feeling positive about it, relatively speaking,
Yeah.
because we have enough money to make something happen. But more is always going to be better. Basically, we don't just want to make something happen. We want to put a very definitive end to such antics, because we have a feeling that if the plaintiff has anything in the way of funds in the wake of this, there's just going to be another target. There were multiple targets over a series of months, even before our friend Arthur. People who the plaintiff was totally willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars doxing, which is, I suppose, legal. That was news to me. It's
Mhm.
entirely legal to dox people. It's entirely legal to send a PI to dig up dirt on you, and then all of your private information, at least a lot of the relevant stuff, is going to be in the hands of someone who has a deranged hate boner against you. Totally normal behavior.
That
And
is bonkers. Yeah.
like the only repercussion would be if it were leaked, the information. Okay, but at that point you're doxed. Like a punishment would almost seem pointless because the damage is done. You can't be undoxed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. I think what we're seeing is just a world and a legal system that is not equipped to deal with the true insanity of people who either are anonymous online or like to pretend that they're anonymous online, and the way that they can treat other users.
Yeah. Fat Brown Buffalo, we know you're not Devin Tracy. We're not. We weren't referring to you, but I appreciate your super chat from earlier.
Oh no, that's not Devin. That's Jank. Look at him.
Yeah,
That's
we all know
Jank
it's you,
Jr.
Jank. Come
We
on,
want
man.
Jank to come on, and he can tell us what he thinks about Anna.
He doesn't know when to quit. He's going off on Twitter, and he's getting ratio. I don't place any stock in ratios because Twitter's fucking stupid. But Jank is not. He's not helping himself. He's digging a hole, man.
He has his ego, his sense of his own popularity is way overblown. Yeah, TYT is a popular channel.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's legacy subs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, progressive circles have moved on, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And he's going to be seen as old-fashioned. I mean, people are going to hold his past against him. Yeah, didn't you used to be a pro-war Republican, Jank?
Well, and it's not just that; it's that he still refers to himself as a capitalist. Like, I guess in his book, he talks about his political ideology being democratic
because
capitalism.
he's made money.
Well,
I have no idea. Like,
he's always called himself a capitalist, though. Like, I've always watched him. He's always gotten into like backs and forths with people saying how, well, no, I disagree with you there. I do think that capitalism's good and the American dream is good and this sort of stuff. And then he'll go into like how Republicans are against it and whatnot, and how progressives are like the true defenders of it. So, but he's always, to my knowledge, he's always called himself a capitalist.
Right, and that is out of step with the online left. The online left is not pro-capitalist. They're not, they're post-capitalist, they call themselves, which is a canard in its own right, but
late stage capitalism.
Right. He has used that term, though, Kevin. So sometimes he tries to have it both ways with the economics, but, like buying into the American dream or thinking that America has redeeming qualities. That's not very much in a step with the online left either. So it's like, the online left is a subculture, but it's one that TYT very much depends on.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that they are definitely dependent on it, and I think that's I think that that's kind of a lesson out there for people who might want to get into this sort of industry, is that, you know, um, there's a relationship that exists between the creator and the audience. And I think a lot of individual folks in the audience of any creator think of themselves in a way as like, okay, well, there's thousands of us, but there's one guy that we're watching or whatever. And they kind of see themselves as not necessarily having that much influence over the creator. But in aggregate, though, the creator can't exist without the continued support of the audience. And so they do get to a point where they're financially beholden to appeasing the interests and viewpoints of their audience. And I think that the lesson there, is why it's so important to be as financially self-reliant as possible in order to have an ethical approach to politics, because otherwise you run the risk of falling into corruption and engaging in corrupt sort of behaviors where you just say what the audience wants to hear. And for me personally, I want to be a content creator, but I'm okay with it taking another 10 years to do it full time if it means that I'm not financially reliant on ever appeasing any one particular view, which I might organically change my mind about at some point in the future.
Right.
So for me personally, I'm working 7 days a week right now to get the money to move to a cheaper part of the country where I can get property for dirt cheap. And then once that's done, I'll be able to basically say whatever I want, stream a lot more. And even if the audience, most of the audience moves away or whatnot, I can go through the process of getting a new audience because
Hopefully
I'll be financially self-reliant. And so self-reliance is the important part of it. Whereas TYT is very clearly not self-reliant. They're reliant on Katzenberg. They're reliant on a lot of radical voices in their audience, and their audience is also dwindled, and they've had to fire a lot of their staff. And I think that's part of the business life when you go beyond an individual creator. But and tell you this, if they operated like Dave Ramsey operates with his business, where they don't borrow money, everything is always balanced, they always run a surplus, they wouldn't be having these kinds of issues because they'd be able to speak their mind and still be solvent. TYT is a really insolvent business. They have been for a very long time. They always have to get bailed out by, progressive millionaires, and then they always have to do a bunch of layoffs. And why is it? They get bailed out to, 7 figures, 8-figure investments, and then they fire people because they're hemorrhaging money, and they need to retain organic support from their audience in order to keep it going. But I don't think they're ever going to be able to recover that. I don't see them ever becoming profitable, is kind of my view of it. And and in contrast, you look at an enterprise like Ramsey, where he recently bought a building for $200 million. He just cash flowed it. He doesn't believe in borrowing money, so he could only buy it when he had the money to buy it. TYT doesn't act like that, so TYT's insolvent. So.
Gotcha, Kevin. Something's going on with your internet. You kind of sound like a robot.
Oh, I sound like a robot?
Yeah, a little bit.
Beep boop.
Is it still going?
I mean, you sound okay to me.
Okay, well, maybe it was just on my end.
How do I sound, Steve?
You sound fine.
You sound fine.
Yeah, sound buttery smooth.
The thing about Jank is he's always, anytime money has come into the company, they just keep reinvesting in it. So like they're always trying some new thing, which is fine. That's running a business. You have to experiment like that. And they, for a digital media company, they have been around for an impressively long amount of time. Like a lot of people have come and went over that time. But like Reese said, it's not, YouTube money isn't what it used to be. And then you have inflation and all that stuff. But like, I don't know. I think that one day that they will be gone because they just, I don't think they'll be able to keep their audience. That's just because they'll get out competed by people who are more hardline. But that's people have been saying that for a long time about the Young Turks. I also made that, in my famous 2018 video about Anna Kasparian quitting. I also said that TYT could fold any day now, and it hasn't happened. So,
Well,
people have called their death before, and those reports have been greatly exaggerated.
their views to subscriber ratio is often dismal. I mean, the videos that people will usually see of them are just the ones that get promoted in the algorithm. They'll have like 250 or 120,000 views, and you're like, oh, okay, they still get views. No, whenever I check out their channel, they often have videos on their main channel that get like 25 or 30,000 views, and it's like, okay, but you have like 6 million subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting one view. You're getting one view for every 2,000 subscribers. That's not a good ratio,
right?
Like,
I don't know how they perform on other platforms. Like I'd imagine there, other platforms may be more. I don't know. It's like social media platforms. People may be more inclined to just see the video in passing than to specifically click on it on YouTube. But they've already been outcompeted. They've been outcompeted by Jank's nephew.
Right. Well,
in a lot of ways, it is over.
That's part of the thing. Is like it's really hard for them to hold talent there because people can go to places where they're going to get paid more. Like Dave Rubin went independent and he's made more money. Hassan Piker went independent and he's made more money. Jessica Burbank went to the Hill and she's making more money there, presumably. But yeah, once you get that internet notoriety on TYT's platform, you don't lose it. So you can monetize that better for yourself. You can do Hassan Piker doesn't have the overhead that TYT does because he's just out of his house. He has a home studio. He doesn't have to pay rent on the studio like Jank does.
Yeah, he bought a pretty expensive house. I think it was over $1 million. And a lot of people were criticizing him for that. I remember back when that happened, I went on Hippy Dippy to talk about it. The interesting thing about Hassan's house, just a brief aside here, that would buy you like a dilapidated 1960s bungalow with one bedroom in my city, and you'd still have to get like a $500,000 mortgage on top of that.
Really?
Oh yeah, like I live in British Columbia. It's ridiculous.
So
it's ridiculous. Oh, you want two bedrooms? Okay, have fun paying a 90-year amortization, $6,000 a month for the rest of your life.
So Vancouver's more expensive than Los Angeles.
Oh, it's not even close because the other thing is like Beverly Hills, that kind of area where Hassan bought into, the average salary in that area is incredibly high. Hassan Piker, I call him like the hardest working communist, at least in the West, because all the communists in the West that I hear, like, I'm not talking about the East, like in China, they work like 60 hours. In North Korea, they work like 48 hours a week. Like they work more than most people. But in the West, communists are famous for saying, well, socialism works, so I don't have to. Hassan Piker, to his credit, he's always streaming. Like he streams like 8 hours a day, like every day. He actually works for his money.
But that's not real work, Kevin.
Well, the money's real.
With the house, no. So I call him like the hardest. No, he's the hardest working communist in America. He does an 8-hour job. So, but the thing is, in BC though, particularly around the Vancouver area. So, like, let's say you had to pick between Beverly Hills or Vancouver. What's the difference? Well, the houses are more expensive in Vancouver, but the salaries are way higher in Beverly Hills, like because there's like a lot of like film, and obviously he works on Twitch, but like generally in that area you've got like finance and film jobs that generally pay a lot of money. In Vancouver, average salary is like $34,000 a year, but the houses are like $2 to $3 million. So it's like the average house is between 40 to 50 times the average salary in the area. That's not true for Beverly Hills. It's still a big ratio, but it's not 30 to 50x the average salary. There are high salaries in the Beverly Hills area to compensate for the high house prices. I would argue that Beverly Hills is also, in general, a more desirable place to live.
Better
Vancouver, it rains all the time. Like, don't get me wrong, Vancouver looks cool. I like some of the aesthetics of the city, but it always rains. And it's like, okay, why would I pay $3 million even if I had it to live in a place where it's just going to rain all the time? Okay. But it's still a nice city. It's a beautiful looking city. And I do like the mountains and whatnot. But Beverly Hills is by far cheaper, just especially when you factor in average salary, cost of living, etc. It's not even close. Vancouver's by far more expensive, by far. So Hassan's house, like people are like, "Oh, it's like $1 million or whatever." I'm pretty sure almost all the houses in that area are around that price anyway. But again, if he were to have $1 million to go into Vancouver, okay, well, now he has to have a bunch of meetings over whether he's going to qualify for a 30-year mortgage, because he's only got $1 million down payment. So,
Gotcha.
What do you think American cities have done that Canadian cities have failed to do, Kevin?
Well, okay, so that's an interesting one. I was planning on returning to Twitch and YouTube to actually divert more away from foreign policy to talk about urban planning. I've gotten pretty interested in it in the last year, and America, America's got a lot of social problems, and America has a lot of issues with things like lax gun regulations and particularly a lot of really nasty politicians in like places like Florida and whatnot. But one of the things that America's done fairly well is that they have a fairly evenly distributed range of pretty sizable cities with good economic opportunity. Whereas in Canada, everybody hugs right near the border. So even though we're the second largest country in the world, we live like sardines in very tiny urban areas right along the border. I think that that's cringe. I think that we should be competing with the Russians. I think that we should be spurring new cities in the Arctic to compete with Russia. I think we should have a nuclear icebreaker fleet. And I think that we should, I think it's an embarrassment that we only have 50,000 people living in the Northern Territories in provinces in Canada, when the Russians in the same latitude, they have 2 million people in contrast, and so they've done far more to develop their northern region than we have. I think another major thing that America's done well, that Canada hasn't, is that American politicians tend to value having a diverse set of factors and industries in the economy, and whether that be the military, whether that be the to some extent still automakers, that's still a big component. There's still a political force behind them, pharmaceuticals, etc. There's a wide array of productive industries in America that they have their political interests that keep them relevant. Whereas in Canada, everything basically got outsourced, and our politicians are only really beholden at this point to real estate equity as the main component of the economy. And that's a recipe for death as a country, because when a bunch of boomers and 75-year-old people look at their home assessments and say, ooh, number went up, net worth higher, it's like, okay, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to sell your home that you've lived in your whole life and rent? Like, it's not real money. It's like because you've grown an attachment to that property. Sure, you could sell it, you could rent, but understand that the number on your home assessment is higher and your property taxes are higher to service that, so that all the young people in the country have to either move to the US or Europe or Asia, or be homeless, and they don't have a future anymore. It's a similar thing to what's happening in South Korea. Japan's going through a similar sort of issue, but it's worse in Canada because real estate comprises a far bigger portion of the Canadian economy, and real estate is a dead component of the economy. It's not productive. It's like, oh, your home is worth more now. Great. Does that produce anything for people to consume? No. Are you going to even be able to cash it out? Nope. You're going to stay there. It's like it's vapor. And the reality then is that young people now, if you want to stay in the major cities, which I don't, I'm saving to get out because I'm done with it. You're looking at 700, 800, 900,000 minimum to get a starter. But that's going to be like 400 square feet, 500 square feet. What are you going to do with that? You're going to work, what, 40 years and still probably owe a bunch on your mortgage because your amortization got bumped up to the point where you're not even just covering the interest each cycle. Your mortgage is actually bigger than it was a year ago, even though you paid all the payments on time, so that you can live in like a rundown bungalow or a 400 square foot condo in Toronto that costs $1 million. It's like it's a joke. It's vapor. And in America, another thing that America does well, and again, there are a lot of criticisms that you could have for America. In America, a starter home still exists. You might not believe that based on how people complain online, but when people complain online about house pricing in Canada, they have a point. When people complain online about house pricing and they're in America, they're just upset that they can't afford a nice luxury mansion. But that shouldn't be your starter home. The problem is that in Canada, your starter home is going to be at least $1 million. But in America, you could actually go to, like, let's just say Alabama, for example. You can actually find a decent home in Alabama for under $100,000. In Canada, not possible. Not anywhere. Not possible. So, and of course, Americans earn more on average. Alabamans earn more on average, too. They have a higher purchasing power than Canadians. So,
So Canada is technically the coldest country on Earth, except Russia is practically speaking colder because more of the population lives in those higher latitudes.
well, Russia has like the coldest city in the world at Amikyan in Siberia, but Canada, oh man, like basically nobody lives north of Edmonton. But
yeah, how would you incentivize people? Like you're saying there's only 50,000 people
yes,
in the Northern Territory. So, and you want to not have such a dense population, limited room in the cities. How do you incentivize people to live in the Northern Territories?
Well, the Canadian government's tried it through a Northern Allowance, but it's not sufficient. I think that one way that you could incentivize it is do similar to what the Russians did, which is just build cities. Now, of course, they did it with slave labor. We don't have to do that. We can just pay people to build cities in the North and cultivate the North, essentially. Especially with the way that the climate's going over the next century or so. Northern Canada is going to become more hospitable. And I think that it would assist in our efforts to assert our sovereignty over the Arctic oil fields that Russia's encroached upon if we did a system of building cities to bring our population in the north up to 3 million and brought online a fleet of several nuclear icebreakers to patrol the Arctic. I think that those would be a recipe to guarantee the sovereignty of Canada's territory in that area, because otherwise Russia has the advantage. And it's not even close. It's not even close. Like, we don't even have one nuclear icebreaker. Russia has multiple. So
send the Mounties up there and they'll take care of them.
No, but the thing is, it's like you don't have to go all the way to Nunavut, by the way, just so we're clear here. I think building a few, million-sized population cities in BC and Ontario and Alberta just to alleviate the excess demand right now, that alone would be good just to address the housing crisis. Never mind the territorial sovereignty. We have a lot of issues and they need to get to work. And instead, our government is intent upon being the guy who invites 26 people over for a dinner party when he only has a dinner table that can hold 8 seats. So that's our government's policy right
Standing
now.
room only.
Our population went up by 750,000 people last year. And there's no room for anybody to live. And so what happens? Well, now, your rents go up to $3,000, then they're up to $4,000. Pretty soon they'll be up to $5,000 a month. I'm basically predicting that rents in Canada, on average, will be $5,000 a month in the major cities by 2027. because the government's plan is to bring 3 million new people in by 2027. In that time, we're expected to put online about 150,000 new homes. But of course, those are just going to be mostly luxury units for foreign buyers, mostly from China. So it's not even going to alleviate any of the capacity here. So
Sounds like a total clusterfuck.
Oh, it absolutely is. And the thing is, I want to be clear just before anybody, might get the wrong idea or anything. I consider myself a patriot. I consider myself a nationalist. I do love Canada. But we're not winning with Trudeau, and we're not winning with the policies that we've been doing for the last decade. So
Trudeau is also apparently a Swiftie. I just heard about this. Not that I care, but apparently some people are not happy about that. I don't know.
Well, it's a broad set of people that listen to her music.
What's the issue
just because
with that?
one of the worst Western leaders happens to listen to her, that's not really that unsurprising. She's one of the more popular artists out there. So.
She's probably the most popular artist.
Why is she not doing concerts in Canada though? That was the issue, right?
Yeah,
she can't afford to live there.
Well, that's the thing. The rents are too high here. How would she be able to afford to rent out a stadium? So,
Canada. Sad.
It's Canada. No, it's the Swift World. No, it's the Swift World Tour got extended again. Next, they're going to China, Russia, Vietnam, Turkmenistan, and North Korea, but still no Canada. So.
She probably could play in North Korea. If there's one artist who would be allowed there, it'd be her.
Well, they actually did let a Western group play Pyongyang a few years back. Laibach was actually the first Western musical group to play in North Korea.
Huh.
You guys ever listen to Laibach before?
I'm completely unfamiliar.
Oh, okay.
I thought that's just what Arnold Schwarzenegger told his dates. Laibach.
Yeah, no, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. They're extremely ironic. A lot of their art is hidden behind like multiple layers of irony.
Huh.
And they were invited to go and play over there. And apparently, the song "The Sound of Music" is really popular over there. And they went over there. I think that I don't think that she would be allowed to play there right now. But if Kim Jong-un was a fan, she probably would be. Like that's the thing about North Korea is that like. It doesn't make it like why are the Chicago Bulls going over? Oh well, Kim Jong Un likes them. That's
it wasn't the Chicago Bulls. It was just Dennis Rodman.
Well, no, but he brought over some of the former Bulls too.
He brought over the Globetrotters. I mean,
he brought over. No, you're right. He brought over the Globetrotters. No, you're right about that.
Yeah.
But like, okay, but that's the thing, right? Like, it's degenerate American propaganda. Unless it's a team that the leader likes and then they get invited over.
Right. Except there's a good chance that if Taylor Swift went there, she'd get kidnapped and like they would never let her leave.
Well, the thing is, so they did actually kidnap prominent South Korean actress and director back in the 70s and 80s to make films. You guys ever heard of Pulgasari before?
No.
It's one of the most popular films made in North Korea, and it's officially credited, as Kim Jong-un or rather Kim Jong-il as the assistant director on it. The director was kidnapped.
Right.
So,
I remember hearing about that. I didn't know what movie they made, but
yeah. So it's like their version of like a Godzilla movie. Okay. But it's like basically imagine a Marxist version of Godzilla. That's Pulgasari.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going pretty late here. I think we're gonna wrap it up. Any last words from either of you?
I mean, I appreciate the opportunity for us to come on and to catch up. It's been way too long.
Oh yeah.
So and if we get a chance, once we've wrapped up all the legal shenanigans, it would be nice to get the show going again when we have time to do it. And of course, you're welcome on there anytime, Steve.
That'd be wonderful. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Everybody go and check out the link to Arthur's GoFundMe. It is absolutely imperative that we shut down this harassing behavior, frivolous lawsuits, and doxing before it gets enabled by the U.S. court system. Understand, if the plaintiff wins in this case, he gets $25,000, which he's going to use to move on to his next target. He did a stream, and he spent about 30 minutes on his stream on this lawsuit, going over his crap list of targets of various people he calls betrayers. And those are people, and you might think, well, I gotta be on there. He doesn't like me very much. No, I'm not on there at all. Spooky was on there a couple times. Almost all of it were conservatives that were his friends and tried to help him. He like, understand, he's probably not going to sue another like progressive type person. Next target is probably going to be a conservative. So this transcends politics. And in fact, we did a stream over on Spooky Nuki's channel where some of the conservative hawks and us, we streamed together. We used to have massive beef, and you know, we didn't even like argue with each other. We were just united in common cause against the absurdity of what's been brought against Arthur. And everybody there realized, yeah, anybody could be the next target. And this is a guy who, he's not even so much suing to try to make himself financially better off. He's suing so that he can get more money to sue more people. He said he'd be happy to go bankrupt as long as it hurt Arthur. He's somebody who has made very creepy, sexually charged comments about Arthur, and has used the legal system to try to force Arthur to appear in the same room, the same courtroom as him, and has posted pictures on Twitter stalking the courthouse area as a message to intimidate Arthur, to say, hey, you have to come here and I'm going to be here, essentially. It is unfathomably disgraceful behavior. This guy is using Arthur's art in his streams as he maligns Arthur and maligns other people with no evidence whatsoever to back his allegations. We have to stop it. We have to put an end to it. And the only way to do that is to essentially fight fire with fire. He's spent upwards of $25,000 of his own money or credit to try to ruin Arthur. And we have to step up for Arthur. And so I appreciate you for having me on. Steve, if anybody's interested in checking out my content, you can follow me on Twitch and YouTube at Superpower Broadcasting. And I'm on Twitter and Threads at Kevin Castley. And by the way, every time I hear Threads now, I think of that old film. Yeah, you guys ever watched that nuclear war film from, I think, the 70s, Threads? It's a pretty bleak film, but, you know, some spooky nukies in that one. So
I have not seen that. Like I said, go on, Reese.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add on to what Kevin said, because we did used to have quite a bit of, you know, I think in retrospect, fun infighting in the hawkish Twitter circles, and ultimately never led to the kind of shit that we're seeing now. And what's happened now, seeing like lawsuits occur over tweets and drama of that sort, no, I don't have an issue with anyone else, really. This will give you perspective faster than any sort of event. We were able to, if anything good came out of it, we were able to make some amends. I was already in a place where I didn't feel like holding a grudge against people forever because we disagreed on something 2 years ago. It's not a way to live, quite frankly.
Right.
Quite unlike the plaintiff, who does hold on to things for years and years, has a shit list. He has like competing conspiracies. So he's suing Arthur for this. He thinks Arthur made an account to troll him, so he's going to sue him. He also has a conspiracy that some of the other conservatives are prank calling him, even though he gave his public number into a Discord server. So now private numbers call him. he has conspiracies about who's behind that, and I'm sure he'll have a lawsuit focused around that. And it's just like, when does it end? When does it end, my guy? This
Well,
is it's no way to live.
It
Absolutely
ends
no way to live.
with his case being dismissed with prejudice, but we
Yes.
need the funds to get an attorney to make that happen. So,
Oh, absolutely. No donation is too small. If you feel like, oh, times are tough. Look, man, $1. What were you going to spend it on? $1. That's all we're asking for. And you know what? If you really can't, if times really are that tough, then share the link to someone who can. It's that simple. This is very important to the future integrity of the online discourse and social media circles in general.
For sure. Yeah, hopefully in a couple months' time, this will be resolved for the better. I'll be at my new job, liking it. Kevin will be up north. Reese will be
Taming Buffalo.
tame with some. Speaking of Buffalo, how are the Bills going to do this year? Real quick, let us know.
They'll probably break my heart again. It happens every year.
Yep, that was a disappointing end to the season.
It's part of the fun, I suppose. But no, Josh Allen is based, so I'll go into it optimistic.
Hopefully that rookie tight end pans out. Hopefully Von Miller doesn't get injured. So I think that was what really did you guys in.
They need him.
Yep.
No more injuries.
No more injuries. All right, Kevin, Reese, thank you for joining me. Good luck, Arthur. Yeah, like I said, you guys know what to do. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Peace.